something just happened in West Africa that has the IMF on edge, and the rest of the continent is watching closely. Ghana, a nation known for its rich gold, resilient people, and proud independence, is making a bold move that may shift the economic balance of power in Africa. In a world where Western institutions often dictate financial survival, Ghana is daring to rewrite the rules by defending its currency, the Cedi, in ways that challenge the status quo. But why is the IMF suddenly calling foul? And why does it matter, not just for Ghana, but for Nigeria, Kenya, Senegal, and every other African country caught in the web of debt and dependence? In this exposé, we unpack Ghana's bold financial maneuver, the hidden fears of the IMF, and what this moment means for Africa's future. This is not just about economics. It's about sovereignty, power, and the right to choose your own financial destiny. It started quietly. Ghana's central bank began injecting US dollars into the market, not as debt, but as a buffer, to support the Cedi and stabilize its value amid global currency shocks. But what raised eyebrows globally wasn't the act itself. It was the timing, the intent, and most importantly, the message behind it. Ghana would no longer sit back and watch its currency collapse under external pressures. While the US, UK, and EU print money to stimulate their economies, no one calls it manipulation. But when Ghana acts to preserve the dignity of its currency, suddenly, it's a red flag. The IMF was quick to accuse the Ghanaian government of interference, but critics argue this is nothing more than economic double standards. This move sent a clear message. Ghana is learning from decades of IMF loans, harsh austerity, and conditionalities that have left African economies vulnerable. The government is asserting that defending the value of its currency is a sovereign right, not a crime. What Ghana is doing could be the beginning of a new monetary doctrine, one where African nations take bold steps to protect their currencies without waiting for Western approval. The International Monetary Fund presents itself as a neutral global lender, offering support to struggling nations. But to many Africans, the IMF is a symbol of control. Ghana's move threatens something far bigger than currency stability. It threatens a system. You see, the IMF's greatest strength lies not in money, but in influence. Influence over policy, over governments, over how much a country can spend on healthcare or education, all dictated through loan conditions. If Ghana succeeds in defending its currency independently, it sends a message to other African nations. You don't need to surrender your sovereignty to survive. That's what the IMF fears most. They know that once one country breaks the cycle, others will follow. Ghana could become the prototype for an African financial awakening, a rejection of the old playbook. Already, whispers are rising in the corridors of power in Abuja, Nairobi, and Dakar. Could this be the moment Africa reclaims control of its economic destiny? The IMF's reaction shows just how much is at stake, not just for Ghana, but for the entire global financial order. Africa is no longer asleep. Across the continent, a new generation of economists, leaders, and citizens is asking bold questions. Why must African economies be tied to the whims of global lenders? Why can't we create our own financial solutions, build our own reserves, and defend our currencies without fear? From the establishment of the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPSS, to calls for an ECOWAS-wide currency, the dream of economic sovereignty is gaining momentum. Ghana's stand may just be the spark. Youth across the continent are flooding social media, celebrating Ghana's defiance. Economists are rethinking the doctrine of endless borrowing. Activists are calling for financial decolonization. The same continent that was once forced to accept structural adjustment programs is now writing its own economic story. Ghana's move is not just economic, it's symbolic. It tells a rising Africa, we can fight back. We can choose dignity over dependency. To understand the present, we must look back. Since colonial times, financial systems were designed to keep African countries dependent. The Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and World Bank, were not built for Africa. They were built to maintain a system where capital flows one way, where debt becomes a leash, where development is defined by Western terms, and where African sovereignty is traded for short-term bailouts. Ghana's story is a crack in that system. By injecting foreign currency to stabilize the Cedi, Ghana didn't just defend its economy, it disrupted a narrative. A narrative that says Africa must always ask for permission, a narrative that keeps African economies weak so their resources can be cheap. This story is not just about Ghana. It's about Nigeria, Zambia, Tunisia, Congo, and every nation caught in the trap of debt diplomacy. It's about reclaiming economic independence, not just in policy, but in principle. And it starts with bold moves like this. Ghana has lit a match. The question now is, will the rest of Africa let it burn out or turn it into a wildfire of change? The path to true independence was never just about flag and anthem. It was always about the economy. Because until a nation can control its money, it can never truly be free. This moment is a test for the continent. Will it cling to old systems or build new ones? Will it fear the wrath of global institutions or trust in the power of unity and innovation? The world is watching, Africa is rising, and the tide is turning. Let Ghana's boldness inspire a generation, not to replicate, but to reimagine. Because financial freedom is not a dream, it's a decision.
What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America is never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in US dollars. Africa has to earn the US dollars, and the only way it can earn the US dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like. The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank, the International Bank for
IMF, World Bank, all other institutions, they make African countries jump through hoops. Loans will never be able to pay. The US, when they borrow money, they're getting it in 1.5, 1.9 interest rate. Africans, when they get the same amount of money, they're paying 9, 10%. The people who don't need a break, they get a break. The ones who need a break, they don't get a break. The sheer survival of the World Bank, IMF, is based on the fact that African countries and many other developing countries do not succeed. Their success is based on our failure. That has to change. And guess who can make that change? We, the children of Africa, we, the Africans, are the ones who have to say, we know your game now. Enough is enough. We're not playing it anymore. And this is where the diaspora comes.